Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Folks, we got a fantastic show for you this afternoon. First, let's check in with our political correspondent and culture crew member, Hassan Giordano, Mr. Politics, as we talk about everything from President Biden's student loan program, as he made that big announcement yesterday, along with a memo that came out from William Barr, the former head of the Department of Justice, to try to help President Trump at that time from being indicted for obstruction. We'll have that conversation, especially, and also talk about some election takeaways from Tuesday night's primary. We'll have those discussions. Big win for Vanessa Bryant and her family in court yesterday, as it was announced that she is going to be one of two plaintiffs that's going to receive a $31 million settlement. She gets 16 out of that 31. We're looking at the conversation about dignity and respect. Do you think this will set a precedent on how crash scene investigation is done? We'll have that conversation with you as well. And then later we check in and talk about Gen Z coming to Congress, how there is a new voice that's rising up right in the state of Florida, a voice that has challenged Governor Ron DeSantis, and see if this is a sign of a possible turning of the tide of political sentiment in Florida. We'll have that discussion. And I got trends posted during the most, so we got a lot to get to, so stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. Oh my gosh, we got so many things to talk about. But before we get into those big conversations, we want to let you know that you can continue to support us here at Black Star Network. Go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com, as we're asking for you to help us in our drive to become a 24-hour streaming platform, where you can hear all of the latest news and get the latest information, be a part of the big conversations, as we talk about a host of things, a lot of great diverse programming here on Black Star Network. So we need your support, full support, financial support on us on social media. You can do that by first downloading the app for free on all of your devices, as well as making sure that you continue to put it out there that there is a Black-owned media institution that is emerging, that is having the conversations that you want to have. So support us here at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, let's talk a little bit about some of the big political news that has come out. Yesterday, President Biden has officially called for a canceling of student loan debts, and it has sparked a larger conversation about everything from is it enough to the state of capitalism in our democracy. Yesterday, let's share a little bit of what came out of the New York Times yesterday, where President Biden announced that the federal government, take a look at this, folks, and this is some things that you should check out what you need to know about Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. But this is what the president said. This is what the New York Times reported yesterday, saying that President Biden announced on yesterday that the federal government would cancel up to $20,000 worth of federal student loans for millions of people, but not everyone with debt will qualify. The action includes rules that will maintain the balances of debtors who currently have high incomes. Those who do qualify will need to navigate the bulky federal loan servicing system and keep a close eye on their accounts and credit reports for any mistakes. It also extends the pause of monthly student loan payments, which means that borrowers won't have to resume payments until at least January of the following year of 2023, and provides details on a new proposal to create a more affordable income-driven repayment plan. Here to talk to us about these ideas around lowering student debt, and more importantly, to talk about the political implications of this plan, is Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano. He joins us every Thursday, and he is the owner and founder of DMV Daily Media Group. Brother Hassan, always a pleasure to talk to you, dear brother. How are you this afternoon? Oh, we got you on mute. You on mute again? There we
No,
go.
I'm good. I'm just right. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. Hey, look, let's start talking about the president and this attempt here. Student loans. Everybody's been talking about it. This has been a part of his campaign. First and foremost, Hassan, because I've kind of seen a little bit of both. Did the president say that he was going to make $50,000 the possible goal of lowering student loans? Was that a part of his agenda? Was that just some other stuff that came into the conversation? But was that originally a part of his platform to become president?
No, it was not 50,000. I mean, I know he spoke in platitudes and he spoke at sometime, especially during the campaign, he varied in the number that he put out there in terms of loan forgiveness. And that's based off of a lot of reports that were given to him by strategists that said, okay, this amount may work, because it initially started, I think, at 5,000. That wasn't enough. So they had upped it to 10,000. And I think that still was like, but when you look at the loans overall across the country, it was like, maybe we need to increase that. But, so you've heard different numbers come out of the president's mouth from campaign season to now when he became president of the United States until what we're seeing right now. But, we often see that in politics, right? It's a political ploy, much like what we're seeing right now in this student loan forgiveness plan. To me, it's a Democratic gimmick, right? It's right at terms. They want people talking about this as they ramp up towards the November 8th midterm elections. It sounds good in theory, Farajii, but I think the practice and the implementation of it is going to be something that I'd rather wait to see how it's implemented, how it rolls out, because when you look at the provisions that are in it, a lot of people are going to be confused, because most people today think just because I have a student loan that I'm automatically qualified, and they're walking around like, yeah, I'm good. Like my it's gone. It's like, no, don't get it twisted. You have to be in a certain financial bracket. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into you being able to qualify for this. And it's almost like a socialistic agenda, which I think that's why you have so many Americans, both independents and conservatives alike, kind of shrugging their shoulders on this, because if it's now student debt, what's next, right? That's not really the role of government, is to wipe out people's debt that they incurred on doing something that's beneficial to them. Whether they support it or not, that's not government's role. And especially for someone who believes in a more limited government role in America, right? And so that's why I think you see so much blowback, especially from right-wing media.
So, and I'm glad that you clarified that part, because, I mean, in the big scheme of things, we do know, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday. When you're talking about student debt, you're talking about millions upon millions of dollars here. And I think that one of the numbers that I saw was like $1.6 trillion in terms of student loan debt, and it's crippling a lot of people, especially Black students, from making the type of progress. You know what I mean? When we talk about the wealth gap, when we're talking about making sure that that the debt doesn't become such a burden on people that you have to take 2 to 3 jobs to try to pay off the debt and still move forward in your career. So how do you reconcile all of these different factors without government intervention, especially since colleges aren't lowering the cost to get education from their institutions?
Well, I think part of the conversation, to me, it's the wrong conversation we should be having. The conversation that we should be having is, how do we give 4-year colleges and universities as free education through? Okay. Right? You have countries that have nowhere near the amount of money that America does, that it gives free education,
right?
Post-secondary, right? And you got a 4-year college degree. That's the conversation we really should be having. If we're able to give this type of money, just look at COVID and the amount of money that came out of COVID, from the multiple stimuluses to all the money that went to cities and localities. We had the brother on from the city, all the cities across the country, talking about that. Look at the money that came out of COVID. It shows that when America is pressed, they can come up with the money if necessary. That type of conversation should be had about how do we pay for education moving forward so we don't incur the debt. Because here's my problem. One, Let's think about all the Americans who never went to college or who do not have college debt. What about those who paid for their college up front or who already paid their debt off, who are not qualified for this, right? So you're basically saying, the hell with us. You don't care nothing about us, right? Think about the kids who are about to go to college, who are going to end up incurring this type of debt. We ain't going to have another moment like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're talking about it's being more patchwork. It's not really a long-term solution. This is just a quick Band-Aid, but it's going to come up in another 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and all it is a campaign gimmick. Democrats are running on empty, right? And they understand and they've seen the impact of the reversal of Roe v. Wade and what that has at the polls. And they're hoping that that's enough in November, but they're not banking on that. And that's why you start to see this rollout now of this, because it's something that the president can do via executive order that does not have to go through Congress. And it's really a easy patchwork. But I don't think it's going to be implemented no time soon. I think, again, it's a gimmick for them to roll out to make people feel good before November. But how it actually is implemented and when it's implemented is what I really want to see, because this administration has shown when the rubber meets the road and it's time to really, crunch time, and you're trying to get stuff through Congress that are going to benefit the American people, this administration has shown that they'll turn and run when the hard work is necessary. We saw it on the package that we saw at the end of the year, and to me, that's a more feasible long-term solution, especially to poverty. With what we saw Congress do in a temporary that should have been long-term, where you're giving $300 to $400 a month to parents of a certain income level who have these children, and paying them in order to help sustain their life and their family moving forward. Those are the conversations we should be having. But when it was time for them to do the real work or getting the votes in Congress, you saw the Biden administration turn and run because they're not willing to do that. And that's going to be what's going to hurt them, not only in November, but 2 years from now if he decides to run for re-election.
And I have to say, bro, that I didn't think about the long term in the sense of, in 4 or 5 years, whether Biden is the next president in 24 or whether someone else is the next president in 24, they're going to have to still deal with this. You know what I mean? Because it's, like you say, it comes out of a space where it's college institution tuition rates. It comes out of a space where, and to Corinna, you mentioned, the interest rates. Let me just share what she said really quickly, which I think is important. She said interest rates need to be lowered and or eliminated at the very least. I don't foresee them to be eliminated because of the system that we're in. But in terms of needing to be lowered, yeah, I mean, there might be some real conversation like student loan. And this is what I heard too, Hassan, and I want to get your take on it, that one of the pushbacks on this idea of just even lowering $10,000 was that it would disrupt the inflation process, of the inflation period, that and I'm saying negatively disrupt that, based on what I read from some economists saying that, look, if you lower that, then inflation is really going to pretty much go way out of control. What's your take on that? What have you heard about that in that respect?
Well, rational thinking would think that, right? I mean, I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination, but you would have to think that, given the fact, they're looking at it from a perspective of, well, if you save this amount of people this amount of money by not having to pay the loan, then all of a sudden this is going to spark the economy, when it's absolutely not true. Because those individuals who may qualify for this, that doesn't mean they're going to run out and start buying stuff all of a sudden. It's okay, instead of having to pay for this debt, then I'm just going to turn around and have to pay for this debt, right? Because many of them have more than just the student loan debt. So again, I do think that it's going to be a problem when it comes to inflation, and that, at a time that we are in our country right now, post-COVID, given the fact that we got now everything's off the table. Now landlords are starting to put people out in the streets. We start seeing the effects of the unemployment rate based off of COVID, post-COVID, right? And everything that comes along with that. This administration should be more focused, again, on how do we attack poverty and turn around the economy in this country. This does not turn around the economy whatsoever. If anything, it does the complete opposite of that. And so again, this is, to me, nothing but a campaign gimmick, hoping that people fall for the okie doke going into November. But I think they're going to realize over the coming days and weeks that people are going to start to flip this on them, and now they're going to have to go back to the drawing board to see what else that they can bring out of the bag in order to trick the people into making sure that they can stay in control of both the House and the Senate come November 8th.
All right, let's go to some of the comments. This might say it's a hard pill to swallow there, Hassan, to put to the points that you made. Hard pill to swallow. All right, Deidre, you checked in and said, look, $10,000 is a start, but it needs to be more. Yeah. But now that I'm listening to my brother Hassan, I'm like, because it's all systemic. It's deeper. It's deeper. It's not just a quick fix. And I agree, like, if we're going to have a conversation about student loan debt, we got to have a conversation about the cost of education in this country. And then that's the domino effect, because then you got to start talking about whether, you pursuing a certain profession is worth a certain amount. Like, how do you, quantify knowledge? How do you put a price tag on knowing something or becoming trained in a certain area? Bigger conversation. So, Deidre, I'm with you, but now we got a lot more to consider. Thank you for checking in. Bribe, you say right wing would be complaining anyway. Why use them as a barometer? Hassan, why use them as a barometer? Why should we consider that?
Because you got to also understand that, and I agree to a degree, they're going to complain on anything that's not Trump driven, right? But half of America, including those who aren't Republicans, think like that. Even those who are independents, even those who are a part of the Libertarian Party, who believe in limited government, right? They believe that this is more of a socialist agenda. This isn't even a Biden thought agenda, right? This is not something that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, the former U.S. senator, who was nowhere near the left-wing socialist that we see him trying to be every now and again these days, he would have never done this before, right? He's being pushed by the AOCs and the Bernies and the rest of that part of America to implement this. But again, it's patchwork. It's not something that's going to fix the economy, and it's not a sustainable solution for the people to come out of poverty or to fix the economy in the future. So if you think right wing, I say right wing because you're going to start seeing left wing, more moderate left wing people like the Eric Adams and those of New York, and they're coming out against this as well because they understand that it's not a long-term solution and that it's going to do more harm than good if it's even rolled out the way we think it's going to be rolled out. And I honestly don't think we're going to see the type of program we think that we would want to see when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. Danita, you checked in. Good to hear from you, Danita. And Bright Bay, thank you so much for posting your thought. Danita, you said, I understand the thought process that it's not government's role to wipe out the debt, but the government allowed the predatory lending tactics. So can you speak to that, Hassan, in terms of when or how or what, at what point does the government intervene versus not a government involvement in an issue like that? To Danita's point, we see all predatory lending. And government we saw the bailouts. Like, when should government intervene when these things start to get really out of control and kind of go into an unregulated space?
That's the $10,000 question, right? Okay, that's the slippery slope we're on right now, because Danita's right in the sense that you're right, predatory lending should have but there's also people who've lost everything because of the housing market and the predatory lending. There were loans that were given out. I know firsthand of individual of my neighbors who had nothing during the pandemic, lost their job and everything, went to one of these predatory lending agencies here in Baltimore who gave him a $5,000 bridge loan. And guess what? They were charging him so much interest. I think it was like they were paying out $200 some a month. And out of that, only $35 was the actual principal. Everything else was that's predatory, right? But these are things that the government's never going to come in and clean up. So you can't pick one over the other. And that is the biggest issue I have. If you're going to do it for one, you need to do it for everybody. And when you're talking about this, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, But in the end of the day is you can't do this and forget about everything else that's going on. Think about how many of Americans actually have government debt that you, mind you, there are programs now currently that you can pay off your debt without actually having to pay it, that they'll forgive it if you do certain things, right? They don't have for people who are part of the predatory lending program of the housing market and the bubble that crashed, right? They don't have that for individual markets and individuals who were suffering during the pandemic. And so, again, it's that slippery slope is, do we want to intervene here and not want government to intervene there? And if we do it across the board, do we even have enough to be able to do that? And I would contend that we don't. And it would really cause a crash to the market, and America will go belly up.
Real quick, Hassan, I want to get your take on this because my man Damon Blissett, Damon, it's always good to hear from you. He brought up the point of community colleges. He said, my son just started community college this week. I would love for it to be free. What is the talk around, making community college free across the country, getting more students enrolled, especially Black students, and then having a different conversation about what to do in terms of the tuition and the fees and just the expenses of going to four-year universities? Can lowering or making community colleges free help to relieve some of this burden?
I think it is. And I think you've seen cities and states try this, and Baltimore did it not too long ago, or tried to do it at least under the Pew administration, and they laid out this whole thing like they're doing now in the Biden administration. Guess what? It went nowhere, right? It was a proposal. It was a campaign gimmick. Got her in the office. They talked about it for the first 6 months, and you never saw it happen. I think, if anything, the conversation needs to start there. Not on, hey, let's just forgive the loans. Let's talk about how do we make education moving forward free, four-year education. But if we can't get to that, to the caller's point is, community college is a big stepping stone, especially for those who may have gotten their GED, who may have, been out of college for some time. And now you have to take these 2-year step of community college before they go to this four-year institution. That is definitely a conversation of a bridge that maybe we start there and see how that rolls out and what that costs and what that does. And then we go on to four-year universities and how do we pay for that? Absolutely.
I'm certainly a beneficiary of community college. I went 1 year and then transferred over to a four-year institution in Towson. And I will tell people all day, if you're not sure, if you don't want to start incurring crazy expenses and debt, start off at a community college. People kind of, for years, people have downplayed and try to diminish the power and the role of community colleges. These community colleges today will put you back on track, will get you at least saying, okay, what is it I want to do? If you can't go through 2 years of school after leaving high school, that's that just goes to show you don't need it. Right. It's just like, it's just not for you. So community college, definitely, I'm an advocate of making sure that, and I know we did this in Baltimore, like you said, under Mayor Pugh, if you go to school in Baltimore, you graduate from high school in Baltimore, you go to community college for free. If that type of program was implemented across the country, do you know how many Black students could benefit from a situation like that? You know what I mean? You know how many
people don't realize though, but in urban communities like Baltimore and across the country, many a times our school system itself fails our children and pushes them through. So a lot of times these kids who graduate high school, really not knowing much, have to go to community college for a year or two for the remedial courses for them to catch up on mathematics and English, right?
That's right. That's right.
And so we should not be forcing them to pay for something like that when it was really our teachers and our school systems that failed them in the first place. This is a jump start to their four-year institutional learning, and that should be free. It's absolutely the right thing to do, but the question is, this country usually doesn't do what's right.
Absolutely. All right, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more conversation with Mr. Politics Hassan Giordano. Let's talk a little bit about the memo where that details Trump being cleared by former DOJ head Mr. William Barr, Attorney General William Barr. We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, let's get Hassan's take on Tuesday night's primary of New York and Florida and how they may be game-changing primaries for both parties. So we'll have that conversation. So stay with us. Continue to post your comments and your thoughts on all of our streaming platforms of YouTube, Facebook, and everywhere else. But make sure you show support to blackstarnetwork.com. We'll be taking a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll have more discussion. So stay right with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking to my brother Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, founder and owner of DMV Daily Media Group, to give us his insight, political insight about what's happening from everything from the student loan debt situation to now where we see this ongoing saga with former President Donald Trump. Now, this is not about those classified documents. It's been released now today. It's been reported today, folks, that there was a memo that was written by former Attorney General Mr. William Barr, one of Donald Trump's close allies, that detail how his justification for clearing Trump of obstruction. Now, this was a document that was released by the court order, showed how in 2019, the Justice Department lawyers argued that President Trump had not illegally impeded the Russia investigation that was held at that time, that investigation that was held by Mr. Robert Mueller III. So now this memo has come to light because this Biden administration has released this memo on yesterday, and it provided a detailed look at the Justice Department legal reasoning for proclaiming that President Donald Trump could not be charged with obstruction of justice over his efforts to impede the Russia investigation. Let's bring back Mr. Giordano here, my brother. Here's what the New York Times reported real quick, Hassan, and then you tell me how this all fits into this ongoing cluster that's affecting Donald Trump. Here's what they said. New York Times said the March 2019 memo delivered to the Attorney General at the time, William Barr, concluded that none of Mr. Trump's actions chronicled in the report by the special counsel Robert S. Mueller III, from firing his FBI director to pressuring the White House counsel to recant his testimony to prosecutors, could be shown beyond a reasonable doubt to be criminal acts. Many of these actions, two senior Justice Department officials wrote, should be interpreted by an inference that Mr. Trump reasonably believed the investigations were impeding his government agenda, meaning he lacked the corrupt intent necessary to prosecute him for obstruction.
You know how ridiculous this sounds, Farajii. I mean, this memo, it sounds like a defense attorney and I was talking to our new state's attorney about this, I Bates, just the other day. It sounds like a defense attorney arguing how his client is not guilty, as opposed to this being a kind of fair and balanced, non-biased memo on why they would not bring charges. I mean, it's the fact that it's well evident that President Trump dangled the pardon opportunity for Paul Manafort, right? And individual witnesses who were going to testify against him, as if this was like a get out of jail free card, when in fact he did just that after Paul Manafort was actually convicted on crimes of financial crimes. He pardoned him, right? This is not the role of the presidency. President Trump and his goons were operating this White House like the New York mob. And I think Trump, that's where he learned it, on the days in the streets of New York. Like, they really was thinking that they can just do whatever the hell they wanted to do and get away with it. And now we start to see the fruits of that poisonous tree come to bear with the Mar-a-lago raid by the Justice Department, by the investigations that he has all across the board, whether it's New York and Pennsylvania is supposed to launch a new investigation against them. I mean, it just appears that this administration at that time and continues to act in such a way that we are above the law. And for so many years, they've gotten away with it. The problem is, I think people are, number one, tired of having to hear all this stuff over and over again. But people are upset now. They're starting to see, if they didn't already know the craziness of Donald Trump, they're starting to see the commander-in-chief, all right, the man who ran this country for 4 years, who was basically blatantly just, for all intents and purposes, shitting on the Constitution and the responsibility of the president, and basically saying, I can do what the hell I want to do.
So this, and to give people some greater context, I mean, William Barr actually was one of the key witnesses in the January 6th hearing. Mm-hmm. For that committee. where he, made the point. I mean, he wasn't forced to testify in a sense of like, he could have rejected the subpoena, but he came out and was just very matter of factly like, yeah, I mean, Trump operated the White House in a certain way. My thing though is like, okay, so the Biden administration releases this memo, and we're seeing it. And this is something that I think a lot of the American people, we already knew that there was some backhand dealing, some backdoor dealing when the Russian investigation came up. That's how Trump was able to kind of, not be penalized in any way. So does this bring anything new to the table? I mean, does this really like push the needle? Does this take things to another level when we look at President Trump, who is still considering to run for president of the United States come 2024?
I don't think it's a shocker to most people who are witnessing the memo for the first time now, but I think from a legal standpoint, now I've spoken to and I've heard from a lot of individuals and even seen it on social media and otherwise in articles, from the legal standpoint, how many law professors and attorneys and former district attorneys and otherwise are taking this. And from the insider politics, the insider baseball of this whole thing is really starting to make people really wary of what really went on in this administration, where most people kind of saw it abstractly from the outside, thinking, okay, they might have did a little bit, skirted the lines, might have been in the gray areas. They're starting to see really now how this White House operated and the mindset. I'm gonna take, for example, New York City law professor Ryan Goodman said it's hard to stomach that this memo accounts to saying that someone is not guilty of obstruction for deliberately trying to induce witnesses not to cooperate with law enforcement in a major criminal investigation. Now, mind you, we put people in jail for less, right?
Right.
We've done that on a criminal investigation of any magnitude. This is so huge in terms of this criminal investigation. It's basically like the federal government investigating El Chapo for giving money to the Texas governor for allowing him to bring drugs. I mean, that's the magnitude we're talking about. Can you imagine if you come up with a memo that says that this official chose not to allow the investigation to move forward because of X, Y, and Z? Like, heads would roll. You would be in prison forever. And yet we're kind of just sweeping it under the rug like, yeah, well, whatever. It's the Trump administration. What do you expect? And that's my problem is we have seen the craziness of Trump to a point that we've started to just kind of shake it off. Kind of, yeah. But if you really dig into a lot of the stuff that the administration did during the Trump years, they literally, a lot of, not only just him, but a lot of the people who served under him should be in federal prison for the rest of their life. But we've kind of, okay, not really paid a lot of it because it's just so much. It's like you can't consume but so much. And it's so much being piled on American people that they're just starting to die. Some are digesting it, others are just kind of regurgitating, just like, yeah, whatever. I got to move on. I got to pay my bills. I ain't worried about that crap. But if you really dig
and you know what, and bro, that's the concern. I talked to Professor Rutledge, USA Today columnist and law professor. She's a former prosecutor. And I asked her a simple question. I said, Professor, given all of this stuff, we were talking about the classified documents. I said, was Professor, he's still eligible to run? And she was like, technically, yeah, he could still run for president of the United States because there aren't any particulars in the Constitution that will prevent him. It never had anything explicit that says that if a candidate is under investigation or anything of that nature is involved. And I just think to myself, like, man, this one man and all of the controversy and drama is going to force this country to go back to the founding document to say we need to have something included in the founding document which prevents another individual like Donald Trump and all that he brings from possibly getting to the highest seat in that land. Like, there needs to be some very, very important conversations about who is able to get into that seat. I mean, you're talking about to the fundamentals of democracy because of one man and how he moved and how he did things as president of the United States. And I don't know if the country is ready to have such a big and very, very fundamental conversation, Hassan.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Like when you look at the constitutional requirements of any individual across the country, let alone just president, there's never been mental requirements. You know, does their mental state even for voting, you have to have certain requirements from a mental capacity and everything, right? Criminal conviction. You don't have that with running for office other than an age requirement, a residency requirement, and the biggest requirement of all, to be a registered voter. That's it. That's all you need to run for a lot of these offices, whether it's president, governor, mayor, city council, state. There has to be, at some point, we have to have a conversation about having a constitutional convention on how we change that. Because, you know, look at Matt Gaetz in Florida, right? You're under investigation for sex trafficking, and you still win the other night in Florida, your re-election for Congress. Like, what more does the American people or the Florida residents of that district want? Like, is that what you, that's who you want representing your interests? Like, I really, it blows my mind how low of a bar we set for our politicians.
What
and then
bar?
we wonder why.
Hassan, bro, what bar? Okay, let's have this conversation. But now that you brought up the Florida elections, and folks, you can post your comments as we talk to Mr. Politics himself about all of these things. But what bar? What bar are we talking about here? Like you got people that are charged with murder. I'm talking about in small towns, members of the Republican Party. I'll never forget reading the story I saw. Dude is charged with murdering his wife. And he ran for some small office, and I think he won. He's charged with murdering his wife. I'm like, yo, you mean to tell me that that's acceptable as long as you can lower my taxes, you can touch little children, you can murder somebody. I don't care if you have just inappropriate relationship with animals. I mean, it just be like, what bar? Like, there's no standard, bro. There is no standard. Then you got this former dude who's just like, and nobody is, and then every time you talk about it, it's like, yeah, everybody know he's wrong like 2 left feet, and nobody's, oh yeah, but we can't stop him because there's no law to prevent him. You're like, damn, he can cause a insurrection. It's like, what bar, bro? And I'm glad you brought it up. I'm just emphasizing what standard, because there's no standard. There's no standard in politics right now.
No, and I think that's really going to lead at some point to a civil war in this country because we have gotten so off track, right? It used to be back in the day, even in politics, you may belong to opposite sides of the party, but you know, the standard of being in office, of being a good politician was, could you work with the other side to negotiate, to get things done on behalf of the American people? And that's how we got the things that we've got in this country for decades, right? The civil rights legislation, the voting rights, that stuff, that would have never came about by one party rule, right? It had to have been a negotiative process, and both parties had to have come. That would never be passed in this day and age in politics, because now we've seen the extremes on both ends, the left and the right, basically saying it's my way or the highway. I could care less what you think. And it starts to show what we are as a country these days. It's like people don't want to listen to reason. They don't want to listen to your arguments on why you feel a certain way or why you believe in something if it differs from theirs, right? If your viewpoint is different from theirs, it's your enemies. Instead of saying, hey, that kind of makes sense. Now, mind you, I don't subscribe to that belief, but I can respect what you believe. We don't have that anymore. It's just like, I'm far right, you're far left. The middle has shrunk so bad that
That's
even those
right.
of us who are in the middle are basically silenced, right?
Yeah.
The elections across the country this year have kind of shown that. Primaries, I told you before, primaries are more elections that are for the parties, that are for the left and the right extreme part, because those are the party folk coming out to vote for the large part. The general election is supposed to be the more reasoned election, because you have not just party, Democratic or Republican Party, loyalists, but you also have independents and third parties who are coming out, and they're supposed to like balance the scale, right, so to speak, and getting that candidate that you want to move forward. But partly now it's a numbers game, and we saw it from redistricting and how they pack the maps in order to get their brand of politics driven down people's throat. We saw it in New York kind of etch back a little bit. The primaries just the other night in New York showed that the left wing, run mostly by AOC, the congresswoman from New York, who is a very left-wing darling over there, many of her candidates that she supported lost. And you saw the more moderate Democrats, either from Mayor Adams, who supported a lot of the more moderate Democrats running in races in New York. Usually your mayor doesn't get that involved in the politics. He was trying to get a lot of them left-wing people out. You saw him get involved. Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, a moderate Democrat, thumped the left wing. I mean, by like 30 points. So you saw a different trajectory in New York than you saw in Florida. Florida was showing that Trump still rules supreme. In Florida and the conservative ideals across this country, I'm telling you right now, you could talk what you want about him. He is the most formidable opponent on the ballot across the board this election. And guess what, Farajii? His name ain't nowhere on the ballot. But he's just that serious. I'm telling you. His candidates, large, I think it was like 89% across the board, won in primaries across the country, including right here in Maryland for governor.
Right. All right, let's talk a little bit more about that, but I want to get a couple of comments from our watchers. Karen, you checked in. Good to hear from you, Karen. Karen Connor, you said the requirements to be president of the United States, the highest position in the world, should have strict requirements. There should be comprehensive training with an ethics and strict moral clause. I mean, yeah, ideally. I think the framers of the document, the founding document, thought, hey, maybe, knowing the weight and the gravity that the seat holds, that you would bring, it would attract a certain caliber of human being. Nope. Nope. And, the culture, we have to keep it real. The culture, and I've had this conversation too. I mean, we talked a little bit about celebrity politics the other day, Hassan, but we as the constituents have become fans instead of constituents, instead of citizens. Citizens will force accountability. Fans will tolerate inaction. Right. Because we're still caught up in, quote unquote, caught up in the matrix of, I like the person versus where does the person stand, or what's their voting record, or what issues do they support and they don't support. So it's like we still have to kind of go through American government class. We still have to be taught civics because we're just not as involved in that respect. We're just not involved at all. But I do want to kind of get your take on something that, when you talked about these elections with Florida, like in New York, we saw one change. Florida, for example, we're still seeing there's the Republican stronghold. The New York Times, they put it out there, Hassan, talking about one of the big takeaways. They said the Trump caucus will probably be strong in Congress next year. You agree with that?
Absolutely. Because even when we saw with redistricting in Florida, see, we always pay attention to the big glitz and glamour. We never really, and it's on purpose, politically especially, they make you look a certain way while they're doing all this other stuff where you ain't looking, right? And so what we don't pay attention to, in which we should, are the local school boards and the legislative fights, because it's the legislators who end up making a lot of these maps when we do redistricting every 10 years. And so Florida has a very conservative legislature. That's how the governor DeSantis was able to get some of the pray the gay away bills and all that stuff that he get, the craziness that he got past the election squad and all that, is because he has a very right-wing conservative legislature who during redistricting, they reshaped those maps in such a way that they packed in a lot of their congressional districts and legislative districts. So now we've seen to a point that even one of the rock stars from the Democratic Party in Florida, who just 2 years ago had a resounding victory, was kind of etched out through redistricting and decided not to even run for office this time around because she felt as though she knew, based off the map that was given to her, she didn't have a chance of hell of winning, right? And so you're starting to see that even with, look, the 10 Republicans who voted for the impeachment of Donald Trump, what, 4 or 5 of them didn't even think about running for office.
No, they're not running. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a chance. Only 2 of them actually won their primaries. The rest of them got defeated. The last one being Liz Cheney, of course. And so we started to see this brand of politics now being played out in places across the country, including in Florida. So yeah, Florida is going to be a Republican stronghold. And I'll say it again. I know y'all don't want to believe it. I do not think, and I would predict that Donald Trump will not run for president in 2024. I think he's fine being the power broker that he is. He is still the leader of the party, even not being president. And I think even if a Republican is elected president, he will still have more influence over the Republican Party than the president will. And I think he's going to be the kingmaker. He's going to decide who's going to represent the party in 2024. And I have a deep feeling that it's going to be Ron DeSantis from Florida.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you. Another big takeaway, Hassan, talking about what's going to be the driving force for Democrats is going to be inflation or abortion rights because of that historic Roe v. Wade decision by the Supreme Court earlier this summer. What do you foresee happening? What will bring the Democrats out, you think, for this midterm?
Oh, it's certainly the reversal of Roe v. Wade, right? We've seen it in Kansas. We've seen it across the board, that this isn't just a Democratic issue. Republican women are up in arms about this, right? Independents, third parties, those who are now able to come out and vote in November, who weren't able to vote during these primaries, are going to come out in droves over this. This is an issue that transcends even gender lines, let alone racial and political lines, right? And so that is going to be the driving force. But again, is this enough for you to come out and say, I'm voting for a Democrat just because of this? And I don't think it is. I think it's going to come down to individual districts, individual races between individuals who are running in those races. You're going to have some extremes. You're going to have some more moderate candidates. I think the Republicans did a disservice to themselves. Even though Trump won across the board on a lot of these primaries, he also got a lot of very extreme candidates that won, who are very way out. I'm talking about way out in left field somewhere, right? And so that actually works well for Democrats because they can paint them as just that, people who are way out in left field. Many times the DNC actually put money behind these candidates to hope that they win, to make it what they think will be an easier campaign come November, election in November. But again, if the economy is the way it is right now, if nothing really jumpstarts between now and November, if the only thing you're running on is the reversal of Roe v. Wade, then you're in serious trouble. They really need to start conversating about what happens next, because the justices said it as much in their dissent, in their opinions. Roe v. Wade is just the start. Gay marriage, interracial marriage, a lot of these protections that we hold dear because of, precedent based off of rulings in the past, they're next up on the chopping block. That's what the Democrats need to be chiming in, and people need to start paying attention to is, if you thought Roe v. Wade was bad, wait till they start overturning all these other decisions and life in America goes backwards, back to the 1930s.
And Justice, I remember Justice Clarence Thomas alluding to that. You know what I mean? He talked about we'll see about the same-sex marriage bill. We'll see if with that can withstand. And a lot of people were like, "Whoa, wait a minute, hold up, man." And it, I don't know if it's going to work to the Republicans because they are, people are already saying that the Republicans are going to take over Congress. So I don't know if it's going to work to their advantage or not. But the Roe v. Wade decision, it hit, like you said, it hit across the board. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this situation plays out. Final thing, real quick, Hassan, because we just see that the judge in Florida ordered a redacted version of the affidavit filed to support the search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. He ordered it to be released by noon Friday. Unclear if the Justice Department will appeal that decision. What's your take on that?
Well, from a legal standpoint, it's only but so much that can be put out, especially when an ongoing investigation. My thing is this, though. Based off of who Trump is and who he's always been, if he really wanted this out there, if he really wanted the copy of the warrant that he had, he would have put it out there his damn self. He wouldn't have cared about no blowback, none of it, because he's never cared about any of that, right? This is all a ploy for him, right? He's playing the politics of it, riling up his base. The DOJ is going to do what they have to do legally, but at the end of the day, they were legally sound in their raid on Mar-a-Lago and on the subpoena that they got. I wouldn't have probably see in legal aspects. You shop judges to try to get the one you need that'll sign off on it. The judge they got is somebody who was clearly anti-Trump, who was a part of a whole nother conspiracy case we could talk about. That's probably not the judge I would have had signing off on this, but nonetheless, they were legally sound in what they did. All this is just political theater. That's it. We'll get past this just like we do any other thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, owner of DMV Daily Media Group. Hassan, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, bro. We look forward to reconnecting with you soon. Thank you for checking in, man, being so good for the culture.
Always a pleasure, brother. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, all right, let's talk about Vanessa Bryant and the big win she got in court from the LA County Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department. It's a big win for privacy. It's a big win for dignity. Or don't you think so? Or is it something just for her? I want to have that conversation. We'll be checking in with Culture crew member Rashad Staten to give us his take on that. Also, later on, there is a new voice in town, possibly coming out of the state of Florida, where a Gen Z member is running for Congress. A young Latino brother is running for Congress. He won his primary, and now he's scheduled to go up against a Republican opponent. And the question that many people are posing is, are Gen Zs reshaping the political conversation and the political path of these major parties? So we'll have that conversation. Plus, I got trends posting doing the most. So stay with us. A lot coming at you in the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Stay with us.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shots.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome to the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversations. We just had a dynamic first hour talking to Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, as we talked about everything from student loans to the situation with President Trump and another that's ongoing saga about his his obstruction of justice and everything about the elections that happened earlier this week in this week's primary of New York and Florida. A lot to get to. Make sure y'all check out the replay at blackstarnetwork.com. Also, while you're there, folks, make sure that you do your due diligence if you love what we bring each and every day. And it's not just with me on The Culture, but to my colleagues. You have Dr. Jackie, you have a host of fantastic colleagues that are doing great things, shows like Balanced Life, The Pivot, and all of those fantastic shows. And of course, we're streaming unlimited content on all of the travels that Big Brother Roland Martin is doing. Definitely show your support for blackstarnetwork.com. Blackstarnetwork.com. You can show your financial support, continue to share the videos and all of the content, and continue to let people know that Black media is here to stay. All right, for the second hour, I wanted to have a discussion around Vanessa Bryant, the widow of NBA superstar Kobe Bryant, who was killed along with his daughter Gianni and 5 other people in that horrific crash in January of 2020. Well, on Kobe Bryant Day, 8/24, it was announced that Vanessa Bryant will be she will be awarded $16 million in her crash photo lawsuit against the LA County Sheriff's Department basically her claim was, and her argument was, that they robbed her of the privacy and dignity by showing crash site photos of Kobe and Gianni and the victims of that horrific crash in a way that was very, very disparaging, and it had brought more trauma and more pain to the family. Now, Vanessa Bryant was originally asking for $75 million in that lawsuit. It will be her and one of the family members of the other victims, Chris Chester, but she was awarded 16. The other victim was awarded 15, and it's a major, major win. Some people are saying it's not just a win for the Bryant family, but it's also a win for the idea of privacy and dignity. What are your thoughts on that? I want you to post your comments on our YouTube page as well as our Facebook page and share your thoughts as we have this conversation with Culture Crew member, who he's an activist, he's an educator, nonprofit leader, Rashad Staton. Rashad, my brother, good to have you back on. It's been a minute, so I'm so happy that you are connecting with us this afternoon. How are you today, bro?
All is well, brother. All is well. There's no all favor, all grace. I'm happy to be back on as well, brother. Happy to be back connected with the culture.
Absolutely. Rashad, real quick, what do you make of this whole trial? I mean, this was a trial that started a few weeks ago, and I remember we were having conversations about this when it really, before we even got to trial, when the motion was filed by Vanessa Bryant that she wanted to take LA County to court. And I remember hearing people say, man, she's not going to win. She's not going to win. But I think it's an interesting discussion there culturally that we need to really look at how we quote unquote in a social media period, how we deal with the issue of privacy and dignity. How, everything is not up for viewing. Everything is not up for people to share. Very, very unfortunate. I mean, just tragic. Crash scene photos, bro. Crash scene photos that were shared. And as I was reading more about this case, you have members of LA County Sheriff's Department who were sharing these crash scene photos in very open spaces. One guy shared it at a bar. They shared it during an awards party, award ceremony. They shared it. I mean, just sharing. Now, during the course of the hearing for this case, the prosecutor or the lawyers for LA County was saying there are no photos, but they did recognize that a lot of the photos that were taken on certain phones had been cleared, or phones were pretty much new phones were brought into the picture. And I want to share with our audience what the lawyer for LA County had to say about this. Check this out, Keenan. Let's post this quote up here, which I think is interesting. In this final verdict, it was reached late Wednesday afternoon, with the jury finding LA County Sheriff's Department and the fire department did share photos of the bodies of Bryant and Chris's loved ones, and in doing so invaded the privacy and caused emotional distress. Now, the jury ordered the LASD to pay Vanessa $10 million and to pay Chris a total of $9 million, while the LAFD is ordered to pay the pair $6 million each. That's how that $31 million is broken down. The decision came down coincidentally on Kobe Bryant Day, also known as Mamba Day, which is a day honoring the late Los Angeles Laker legend whose jersey numbers were number 8 and number 24. What's your take on this, bro?
Yeah, bro. First, condolences goes to the family, right? I believe I'm grateful. I would say that this case in itself, the trial itself, didn't last too long, right? Because it's at the expense of a family that has already endured the passing of, a father, a husband, but also a giant in the sports world, business world, and all that he's done for the service of his people through his own talents and skills, right? But I think, like you said, this is definitely a win for the moment and the time that we're in with this virtual social media world that we always have to navigate, and knowing that everything does not have to be clickbait, especially in a place when we have to uphold, the passing of a loved one that can cause a lot of emotional distress, in which it did. But also, when we often talk about the accountability of law enforcement, but we also need to be mindful of the moral accountability that has to be employed on those that we are sworn in to do the service of the greater people. And those folks violated that, right? And we watched throughout the case of them trying to remit, reframe, and try to eradicate all the evidence that was, but the world that we living in, once it's posted, is out there. It just takes somebody be able to enough to go enough depth into the ocean to find that content and bring it back to life, right? And I think that's what this case done in that space of them having to endure the loss of a loved one, for someone to use it as clickbait, as humorous bar conversation, as a trophy of someone that's deaf. They are deserving of what the accountability was. It wasn't a 75 million, but it was costly enough for that institution and that aid in both agencies to build some type of standard, right? A practice, a moral code that shouldn't be done at that expense of whom it was. And I think coincidentally, and just how the universe aligns, it allows it to be on the same day of honoring him, but at the cost of what?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, and I agree with you. And I mean, let's keep it a buck, right? The fact remains, it was disgusting. Who would want to see that? Now, here's why I think this is interesting for the culture. And folks, y'all share your thoughts around this. Because, and I heard, and I read some on social media, some people was like, well, why is this even why is this even important? Because we live in a time where people love trauma. We love trauma porn. That's what it's, we love to see car crashes. We love to see fights, right? We love to see people in their worst moments in life, right? And we love to not just see it, but we love to share it.
Right.
And there is something that eats away at our humanity. This is just me in my understanding and view. I think there's something that eats away at our humanity when we share the pain on such a mass level of someone else. You know what I mean? Like, there's a crash. In this particular case, this helicopter literally ran into a mountain and exploded. And you want to have a souvenir? You want to carry around a photo of body parts? I mean, but see, this is what people are on in 2022. We want to see somebody's body parts. And I'm going back to the conversation that we've had earlier, Rashad, and I would love to get your take and hear from our watchers. People were like, well, when the Uvalde happened, people were like, oh, we should get photos of that tragedy. For what? Nobody wants to see dead children. Who wants to see that? To try to convince jokers that guns are, having access to guns need to be addressed. Like this ongoing fascination that we have with death.
Yeah. It's sickening. It's a space of like morbid that doesn't.
I don't know I don't even know what purpose it truly serves.
Right. And that's when that comes in the space of those that engage in that inappropriate and inhumane act, right? What did they gain out of it? And at the cost of what? So now your job is in jeopardy. The service and the question of your intent and your morality of who you are sworn in to be, from the fire department down to the sheriffs, right? Now to what did you gain out of that? A few laughs at the cost of who? Well, like you said, we've seen this too many times, and it has continuously grown beyond our level of control that it's impacting our humanity and how we see and uphold a moral type of standard in today's world, right? It's trauma porn has always been the expense of whom, right? It's at that space of is it inflicting a change, or are we inflicting pain on one another, right? When you think of Mama Till, she put that picture out to cause and ignite an ignition of change that people needed to see the realities that was hidden, right? We didn't have to question his death, right? So we don't have to see the corpse of him and other loved ones and friends that lost their lives at that. At the expense of what? We see it every day when we're trying to fight in these movements of progressions, and we're seeing Black bodies being lynched through bullet wounds and things of that sort, and yet we're recording it, right? When do we use our advancements and innovation to the better of humanity? We have used it all to distract us, to destroy us, and undermine each of us to the point that we don't even know how to recognize each other's humanity. I think
Come
this
on,
case
bro.
and is one that we take into further conversation. That it's not a monetary gain, but like you said, this is a moral win, and I'm glad that the courts upheld it. The jury saw that it was saw fit that
That's a great
they
way.
ruled in that favor.
I think that's a great way of saying that this is not just a monetary gain, but this is a moral win. Let's go to some of our watchers, and so many of you are checking in. I truly appreciate it, Culture Crew. Karen, you got this one. You said this settlement is well deserved. The condition of the body should be between the coroner, funeral home, and surviving families. The outcome serves a lesson to careless law enforcement officers. I wholeheartedly agree. I put it out there on my Twitter that if you're in the business, for lack of a better word, where if you're in the work of saving lives, you should first respect it.
Try that again. That's it right there.
If you are a civil servant and your job is to save life, then I think that the number one qualification for you to do your job is, do you have a respect for the dead? Do you have a respect for the living?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we just need to start asking that, Rashad, on the application. Do you respect the dead? Maybe it needs to be asked. If you have access to certain photos, certain images of individuals, can we trust you to do your job, to keep that information, to withhold that information, not make it public? I mean, that's the precedence I think that something like this can have, because we are in a culture of trauma porn. We are in the culture where people want to see, people find it to be attractive to see the worst in people. So maybe we need to ask her. I don't know, but great comment, Karen. I truly appreciate you. Janae, you said each generation gets worse and then it infiltrates the masses. Sadly, people don't even know what decency is. Like something as simple as phones off in church. The basics aren't being taught. Yeah. And Rashad, I'd love to get your take on that. I mean, you're talking about the morality of things. And I think here's the part. We often assume that everyone has the same or is working from the same moral code.
Right.
And we aren't. Yep. The person next to you, and this could be, morality could be subjective, right? The person next to you may not be in church, at your job. Hell, it could be somebody literally in your family. Their view of morality may be different from yours. And how do you handle that? How do you tolerate that? How do you deal with that? We're seeing more and more, especially nowadays, that people can grow up in the same household and be on different ends of the spectrum of politics, morality, values, different ends. That's the time we're living in, right? So how do you think that could be reconciled with Sean? I know it's a big question, but you often are dealing with these type of dynamics. What do you take on that?
I think, the viewer Janae, I think she hit it on point, right? And given this reflection point of assessing different generations, we can attest to the reality of that we have lost a sense of culture towards decency, right? And I think what you're speaking on, Farajii, is exactly that. So what places puts back this void of indecency to the point that it had become our normal being, normal behavior, normal actions, that it has to be a space where we have some foundational morals, right? And she alludes down to the church and in the world of now the church, and reading the Bible from your phone versus the actual physical copy of a book, to people not knowing when to silence themselves. I think a lot of it is down to that, silencing the noise, right? Silencing what doesn't really feed us in that space, right? Indecency of sharing somebody's body, deceased body, a corpse, in that sense of what is there to gain? What decency is in that action? How do you uphold? What is their level of, like, I just can't grasp to it. So that's why I think this win is a win for both. Like we said, has been a moral gain, but it's also that what she just said, this word decency is just holding up on it. And it's like, how do you build that? You have to build it from exactly first winning cases like this, that it sets the standards in the courts. So if something ever to come back again, now you have this courts adhering to an amendment, a law that has now will be the foundation points, right, of how to assess further cases like this that does come up. And oftentimes it has to happen to our celebrities because of their level of visibility, but this can happen to any of us. This can happen to you, I, or myself if we unfortunately get in a car accident and somebody want to share, the crash in itself, right? Now we have some type of standard that we can build a culture of decency, right? And how do we share these? How do we protect these in the spaces when you can do an airdrop to everyone's phone and they, with or without their permission, that they want to know the content? This shows up in our schools. This shows up in our communities. This shows up on our timelines. When is it too much that is not worthy of being shared? And what do you actually value enough that you want to protect them?
Hey, I don't mean to interrupt, but you're talking to somebody today here, Rashad. When is it too much? I don't think there is. I don't think, going back to the having of a standard, I really don't think there is a line.
Yep. And that's where, so we have to draw one.
I just don't see it, bro. As much as people post on social media, and not even just on Facebook or Instagram, if you go on to some of these other smaller sites, right? You know what I mean? Whether you're talking about hip hop sites or they got sites just dedicated to people fighting, dedicated to the wildest stuff that you can see online. And how many people upload these videos. It's like we're always looking for a crazy ass moment to record. Or there's always, you know what I'm saying? And I think that speaks volumes. Everything is not a social media moment, right?
Bro, it reminds me, right? So when I go and speak now, right, and we're doing different workshops, we're doing trainings, doing keynotes, addresses, or we're doing activities with all generations, right? Across the country, and especially here in Baltimore, I make it known at a certain point of time within the presentation itself, like, pull your phones out. These are the moments that we should be sharing. These are the moments that we should be capturing. These are the moments that are worthy of purposeful clickbait, if anything, right? Show that we're acting in a space of peace and good and joy and happiness. Like, let's counter and try to gain some sense of balance between the good and the bad, right? And sometimes it has to be that taught moment right there in it for the young person, the adult, and others, because when we are experiencing good, we become so attached into it that we become so present that we forget to actually capture the moment. But when we see something that's alarming, we see something that's destructive, we become so surprised and intrigued with it that we want to share it because we believe nobody else will believe what just happened, right? But why should we not have that same mentality and perspective when we're experiencing good? And I think that's one of the ones. So, like, how do we build that? It has to be happening in each moment, right? Enough with recording them infringing on our rights and beating us up, right? The Black Panther Party they didn't have a camera. They used their bodies with education and knowledge to protect their communities. So even when the camera is not present, we're knowledgeable enough to see the decency and know the law that we can uphold ourselves, even when those that are part of the law and sworn into it are violating it amongst us. Right, it comes to a point like that camera can't be your only tool, and it can't be a tool of destruction.
Absolutely, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. And if you got enough energy and enough patience, and you're in a moment of madness, and you could pull out your phone, you can call for help.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? If you can record a 2, 3, 5 minute negative interaction, you mean to tell me you can't call a 911 first? I always thought that, Rashad. Like, I always thought that. And I'm like, why are we recording it instead of stopping it or trying to get somebody to somebody else, the police or someone else, to stop it?
Right.
But we're worried about getting, being first on scene. Y'all check this out. Y'all seen this? Uploading it to our social media so we can get a bunch of likes. And, oh, man, that shit crazy and all of that. We love that. We absolutely love that. Sophia, you checked in. You said these police shot unarmed African Americans in the back, took pictures when they hung our ancestors, and made postcards of them. So what decency? They've been operating the same way for years. And this is not just white.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right, Sophia. We know that. But this is not just white people. This is just in terms of how people are today in general. Thank you so much, Sophia. Great point. Hotep Pan Africa, you said many find entertainment in the tragedies of others. It is a psychotic fetish. Woo. I feel that. I feel that. That a psychotic fetish that we're all forced to embrace. Great point, Hotep. Thank you. Cedric and Nicole, you said there's nothing to gain in that it is sick and carried over from Middle Passage terrorism. Wow. That's why I love my culture, my online culture crew, because you guys, y'all get right to the root of it. Y'all get right to the root of it. I saw someone else, Cedric and Nicole, thank you so much. I saw someone else said that, you know, it still shows that Black life is still doesn't matter. Absolutely. Absolutely. Zobing, you checked and you said, how is it that we keep seeing this kind of behavior from law enforcement? They should be held to the same standards as doctors and nurses. Right. Higher, what do they say? HIPAA laws set standards for sharing and releasing medical info. That's true. Maybe that needs to be something that needs to be discussed on further. And maybe it is. Thank you so much. Nisa, 1971. Nisa, 1971, you said it's all working. The multiple daily doses of violence in the news, in social media, entertainment, and our communities is contributing to our collective desensitization. People are becoming inhuman. See, this is the culture, Rashad. This is the culture that we're living in. And the beautiful part about even having this conversation for me, bro, is that we gotta recognize and call it out for what it is. Our culture loves death. Our culture loves destruction. We love tragedy. And I'm talking about from Black people as well. Black people as well. I've heard children, I'm sure you probably had overheard children talk about death in such a weird and a very, very uncomfortable way. If you're talking about somebody, yeah, man, I saw a dude get shot, his head blown off. Yeah, oh, for real? Yeah, man, did you see the blood? Yeah, I saw the blood. It was gushing out of his head. Like, word? Yeah, man, y'all want to go over there? It's like, I'll never forget that classic scene from Boys in the Hood. John Singleton's one of his classic movies. Y'all want to see a dead body? Never forget that scene. And I was like, if that's not life in Black communities, y'all want to see a dead body? Like there's entertainment in that. Entertainment to see our own destruction, bro. Go ahead, bro.
No, I was saying we become, even our younger generations become so familiar with death that we forget to teach them how to live. I think it just plays on that. And then they talked about this Middle Passage terrorism of witnesses Black bodies being lynched into barbecues and picnics and pick-a-nigga things and things of that sort, that it has correlated into a culture that we have not made and self-defined for our own people to live and live accordingly to, right? That at a certain point, we got to get rid of a culture that is dehumanizing us as a people. And we have to create some type of culture that correlates and translates both from this real person-to-person world to this virtual world. Because, man, there's so much that we can show up as who we are in the real life, but then can blinking something else with an avatar and a profile that has nothing to do who we really are, who our spirits and our souls is. It's sickening, but I think this is a fight that we're going to be continuously fighting for the pretty long time. But I take this win for the win that it has been, that it causes us to have these conversations. And it's a space of accountability now, because now we have a legal precedent that's put in place for us to now hold the community as well as law enforcement according to.
Absolutely. Excellent point. Folks, we got to take a quick pause as we move forward. Let's talk about Gen Z in politics. There is one Florida brother who ran for Congress in Florida. He trolled the governor down there, and guess what? He got support enough that he actually won the primary elections. He's up for to run against his Republican opponent, but it speaks volumes about where Gen Z is taking politics and shaping the agenda for both the Republicans and Democrats. I'm going to share with you a little bit about his story and get your take. Also, as we close out today's show, I got some trends posted during the most. So stay with us All of that's coming up in the final few minutes of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking to Culture crew member Rashad, my big brother Rashad, who is a nonprofit leader, activist, and educator about a number of things, particularly around the Vanessa Bryant case. So big shout out again, our condolences go out to the Bryant family and to all of the victims of that crash in January of 2020. Now I want to switch gears. Let's move from that tragedy to this triumph, where a young brother by the name of Maxwell Alejandro Frost, he came onto the scene in Florida as first one who was right up in your face as an activist. And Rashad, you can appreciate that. He took the tactic of bursting and crashing a June interview with the Republican governor down in Florida, Ron DeSantis, with calls for action on gun violence in America. In that interview, he described the interaction with the governor as good trouble. As the governor said during that moment, nobody wants to hear from you. Well, guess what? Somebody wanted to hear from this young man. Apparently, Maxwell Alejandro Frost decided to take his tactics to the next level and run for office. Guess what, folks? He actually won the primary down there in Florida. There he is. Look at his brother. He said that video, let me share this with you, and Keenan, let's post what Brother Maxwell put out there very quickly. He said that video is really a microcosm of what's going on in Florida. The governor shooing people off who might have a different opinion, being rude, being a bully, as supporters cheered him on. He said, and then we know the majority of people in this state are not in line with that type of governance and that type of thinking. And I truly believe that's part of what led us to victory here. Now, he also campaigned on gun control and Medicare for all and won high profile endorsements from progressive U.S. Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. beat out a crowded cast of Democrats who ran for the seat in Florida's 10th congressional district, which includes the Orlando area. Now, here's the other thing about him real quick, Rashad. Let's bring Rashad back in on this. This is what I thought was interesting. On his website, Rashad, he detailed his Cuban heritage. This is a Cuban brother, noting his mother put him up for adoption after she was, quote, caught in a cycle of drugs, crime, and violence while pregnant without health care. He also wrote about experiencing police abuse firsthand and gun violence in his community while highlighting his activism work around voting, abortion, and guns. Wow. Maxwell Alejandro Frost. What do you make of this, Rashad? Like, you know, I know, and you and I have been doing activism work for years. I've seen people take big steps, make major moments, interrupting, you know, political leadership. I've seen all of that, right? But I think it's also something very, very powerful when somebody goes from that place to now running for office, saying, you know what, I'm not going to just interrupt. I'm going to just uproot. I'm going to just disturb. I'm going to run for office. You ran for office as well as one, right? And then to win in a state like Florida, which includes Orlando, when you get that far. I mean, what do you make of that, bro? This is like, you know, a form of poetic justice, I think. You know what I mean? Because Ron DeSantis said, nobody wants to hear from you.
Right. No, I
Guess
think
what? People wanted to hear from this dude.
definitely did. You didn't want to hear from me, but people did, right? And it's the people that elect. It's our people that elect our public servants, right? And then we have on the other end in this political game, you have the corporations that elect our elected officials, right? So every now and then you'll see an emergence between two different types of cloth, one of a public servant and one that's an elected official. And when times of transition, turmoil, and times of a need of guards of change, you'll start to see that the people's voice is heard more, and that the voice of those to represent and speak on the behalf of the people are heard, even when the masses of those that assumed that their position was to lead become even more silent. And congratulations to Brother Maxwell Frost for winning, and I hope that he wins the entire elected seat, so that, you know, a change of guards in that time when he alludes to it being a microcosm, and all of us knowing, even if you're not living there as a resident or a transplant of Florida, we all have each year, each political cycle, Florida is one of those main states in the sense that we all learn something a few times out of a year throughout that time, even if because it's such a pivotal and an impactful state that we have to learn about Florida's politics, and to see that Florida politics still has a way of cracking that system and decoding the matrix by allowing a Generation Z to take on a position that I'm sure is much needed of a new occupancy, right? That we've seen this all the time. And I love hearing the story because, like you said, it's one of fair too often that it is celebrated, but I think it also, with us that's knowledgeable of history and those who have became positions of power, excluding Clarence Thomas, but others, we see in the spaces of seeing this again, right? He said it's a good trouble, which is a nod to our good brother John Lewis, right? Our great ancestor, a good trouble. When he was positioned into Congress, we got to understand that was the mantra and the slogan that attested to who his strength and character was when he was a young brother leading SNCC, right? And then being the youngest of the Base Six that worked with Martin Luther King, right? That John Lewis was their good trouble. He was the same one during the speech on the March on Washington. He was the only one whose speech had to be revised 3 times because he was about to speak so much truth to power that the powers that be did not want him to tell the truth to the masses of people, right? So it was not just I have a dream speech that ignited people on the Mall of Washington at that time. It was the original words of the John Lewis himself, who his ancestral spirit is still connected through folks like Maxwell Frost, right? I think it's about time. It's a change of guards. And I see that him being very liberal And he has a lived testimony that attaches to the policies that he wants to uplift, right? From being a young man, of understanding how his mom raised him and the experience of what he had to go through to that time, to being a youth advocate, to now positioning himself to when the door opens, he will get his rightful seat. I'm excited to hear more of his story. I pray that he is protected throughout this time, because it's not an easy fight. And I'm sure he's up against a lot. But for him to go into this level of trajectory real soon means that it's the rightful time for him to be positioned to where he needs to be.
And let me just tell you, brother, the man is making national news because as possibly becoming the first Gen Z member of Congress. 25 years old, progressive activist. He already got, like I said, the support. Hey, man, look.
Farajii, quick joke. The office buildings are already mixed with all different generations. It's about time that our Congress reflect the new world that we're living in.
Come on, man.
All of our cubicles have every generation, from baby boomers to Generation Z. All of our classrooms and college institutions are reflective of this diverse intergenerational one. Why is the one leading entity that leads us in law and the lawfulness of this land is not reflective of its people in its demographics? It is about time.
Let me, and to that point, brother, to that point, and I really hope, if you're down in Florida, folks, if any of my watchers, if y'all are down in Florida, Culture Crew, y'all should show support for this brother. Because what I think it can do is it can turn the conversation around about, we often have this. Well, I've had this conversation with you privately, Rashad, as well as publicly, but it will turn that conversation around. Like, people say, well, where's the next generation of political leaders, of Black political leaders? Now, some of us are going to make it. Here's the thing, and you can certainly speak on this, brother. Some of us are going to be like, well, he's Cuban. He's not, quote unquote, from the motherland. He's not African American. He's Cuban American. The man is dark.
We're going to take every qualifier to try to disqualify him and make it easier for those that want to discredit him, a cleaner slate, so that they can retain back what they should not already have in the first place.
Come on, brother. Don't go for the okie doke, folks. Don't let a label to get in the way of our progress, because he's not of this community or that community. Please, let's not get into that, because if he gets the full support of the Cuban community, of the Black community, if he's running, right, he's 25. Who's to say what this brother, who he will become, the path that he can take, who's to say what type of change that he can create as a result of him being there? Look, I don't care if the man is Cuban. I want to make sure that brother, if his values and his interests are in alignment with mine, what does that have to do with him being Cuban? But I'm bringing it up because I know Black folk. Black folk, we love to set up barriers, because if you ain't truly Black ain't Black. As if we really all are, you know what I mean? As if the slave master didn't creep into the house, into the backwood house every so often. Like, we all blackety black. We all, come on, get the fuck out of here with that, man. I'm talking about interest. I'm talking about moving the needle forward on what's important. And if we got a brother who is willing to go blow for blow, tick for tat with the governor,
right?
Please, I'm taking ownership. He was us.
He's invited to the cookout, right? Come on, like, this is our brother. He
with me. You know what I'm saying?
He with me. This is it. This is my extended cousin. We cousins.
This is my man. This is my cousin. You know how it is, Rashad. This is my cousin. Like,
you get a seat. Get him a plate. Get this man.
Right.
It's about time we eat together rather be feasted on. I agree.
Come on, brother. Come on, Rashad. Come on, brother. Come on. We'd rather eat together rather than be feasted on. Come on, I couldn't say it better. Yeah. But no, bro, real talk. I'm happy for this brother, but I think that, and the reason why I think we should have this conversation is because, there is a growing and emerging consciousness right now in this country where people are pushing back. And it's the change is not going to come from the elders.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come from the young. It's going to come from, I've heard Minister Farrakhan use the term, the Joshua generation. Those generations of young, and you're part of that. I've been a part of that. I mean, it's going to come from any one of us who say, you know what, enough is enough. These systems don't work. And I hope that we're not in this very stale place, Rashad, where we like, well, does he know? Is he experienced enough? Dr. King, if you look at the great ones that we quote, that we subscribe to, these brothers and sisters were young men and women involved in movement. I read about Al Sharpton, where he was 18 years old in 1972 at the great Black political convention. He was 18 at that time. So when you're talking about situations like the importance of bringing the next generation in, how is that going to happen? There has to be a culture where we say we respect, we honor, and we're going to provide a space for the young to take us further. The culture has to change before we start talking about policies, and before we start talking about programs. There has to be a cultural shift from our vantage point. What's your take on that, bro?
Yeah, I agree as well. And it can't be a space of allowing, like you said, any of these divisive tactics that we are all accustomed to, that we know is going to be forthcoming, which is why I'm glad that you put it out there, that we just have this in-house conversation at the kitchen table with us Black folks that, hey, he's our cousin, right? In that space of, but also we got to be in a larger scheme of things in this new world. It's like we have to address these isms. This is not a space where we allow ageism to help us to be a little circumspective of what this man can possibly achieve as an elected official. One in particular is because age doesn't equate to wisdom, right? Wisdom is something that is passed on, that is beyond our physical form, but wisdom is also through applied knowledge and action, right? So anybody of any age can acquire some level of wisdom and discernment to lead any people. Like you said, we have seen it else before. We've seen the prodigy son of Martin Luther King Sr., who's Martin Luther King Jr., surpass him. We've seen John Lewis step into SNCC at the age of 16 years old and working up the ladders, and seeing him being outrooted by a young Kwame Ture, right? Stokely Carmichael, who wanted to be the next generation of the SNCC leadership because he thought Safeguards, who was in that intermediary age of who John Lewis was at the time, uprooted him. And we still are looking at both of these men as pillars in a generation that we must be willing to recognize our leaders in the present moment. And this is not a leader that has a jersey. This is not a leader that has a number and a name over top of them. And this is not a leader that is trying to prophesize off of entertainment. This is a young leader that have seen his voice and advocacy be heard, even when it wanted to be silent, to the point that his people has catapulted him to this position. And now he just needs the rest of us to get on board and be the village that we need to come and overcome this red state and turn it to blue, or turn it into whatever hue that allows us as a people to show up and be our free self.
Absolutely. Jacqueline, you checked in as we having this conversation about the possibility of having the first Gen Z member of Congress. Jacqueline, you said our diaspora is everywhere. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a conversation that's right there with our culture crew, Rashad, happening right now. Folks are talking about the history of Cubans and Africans working together, Fidel Castro and the great relationships and the ups and downs of the relationship between Cubans and Africans. So we do need to include that as part of the discussion, talking about Cubans, Africans, Haitians. I love the conversation we got right now that's brewing. That's happening right now. So make folks, y'all check it out. Janae, you say kudos to Maxwell, but Florida is a microcosm of the Latino population. Good for them getting representation. I hope they can help bridge the gap because we need more Democrats in that red state. Yeah, I would agree. I definitely would agree. And I feel like, Rashad, a lot of times if we don't see that sometimes our progress can come in the form of other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's not going to always, it may not always come in the form of Black people. The movement doesn't always work like that. God doesn't always work like that. You know what I'm saying? You can get blessings from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
If God so move that person to be a blessing to you, you know what I mean? You could be blessed by anybody. White person, Black person, Latino, Native American, Asian, doesn't matter. You know what I mean? But what you gonna say? You know, it's like that old story that if you see a person drowning, you praying to God for somebody to drown to save you, and you know you got this type of person coming up to you, and you're like, no, I want it from a Black man. Then you got this person.
Mm-hmm.
No, I want it from somebody that's coming from my community. Then you die. And then when you reach your maker, he said, well, you asked the God, and you say, well, why you never came out and saved me? He said, I did come out and save you. You just didn't accept it because I sent this person, that person, and that person. You didn't accept it. And see, that's the space that even, and sometimes, and this is just, I think this speaks volumes about our oppression. We've been so oppressed that it's hard for us to even accept help, right? We've been so oppressed, we've been so messed up in the head that we can't even accept the help, whether it's coming from a white person, Latino person, whoever. It's just like because we're like, no, I don't trust nobody. Mm-hmm. God, you're gonna have to come down. And God said, well, I am making myself known in this person. I'm making myself so known in that person. So there's still a lot of pain, which I understand. There's a lot of pain, but I don't want us to get into a space, Rashad, where we're rejecting helpers in the struggle, in the cause, in the fight for liberation. We shouldn't be. We don't have the time nor the liberty to reject people who want to take us take us further along. We don't have that time. I'm not going to. What's the point? If you got an Asian person to say, yeah, man, I'm with the causes and the struggle of Black people, what you want to say? Well, man, you Asian, man, you need to go back to your community, and we got it over here. Shit.
You can't do
if you got a
this,
white person, if a white person said that, you're gonna reject a white person if they have good intentions and they willing to sacrifice and and struggle with you, you gonna reject a white person? I'll wait. I know us. Some of us would.
Mm-hmm.
No, bro, I'm not rejecting them. No, you owe us. So you actually do. I've been expecting you to help because you've done so much damage. So you owe us. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to, again, we just highlighting the work that this brother is doing, and I really hope and pray that he's successful. And that folks down in Florida understand, like, if y'all want to see real change, you're going to have to see it. It just may come through the next generation. It may come through the next generation. All right, very quickly, as we wrap up this part of the conversation, Rashad, I wanted to, talk a little bit about some of the things that are trending. Capitol Music, check this out, folks.
Throw the whole thing away.
This is why we gotta have the culture. This is why we gotta have the culture, because we gotta check when stuff just goes left in the culture. All right, if you did not know, Capitol Music Group, they had just a couple of days ago. We didn't get a chance to talk about it here on the show, but it was in my notes to have us talk about, but we just never got to it. But Capitol Music Group had initially went as far as to sign a virtual rapper by the name of F.N. Meekin. And check us out. Look at this dude. Look at this dude. I can't even say dude. Look at this thing.
It's like a baby, a Lil Pump, and Tekashi 6ix9ine. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. He looks like Tekashi 6ix9ine. I don't know who the hell this guy is. This thing is. Well, apparently this guy, or this thing, F.N. Meekin, he was partially powered by artificial intelligence. Take a look. Check this out, Rashad.
Red flag. We need flags for this segment. Just as you go through this story, we need flags and just start throwing them. There's so many flags. Take it back, Coach. Start over.
So he's a virtual robot rapper that has amassed over 10 million followers on TikTok, according to the New York Times. This is a non-living thing.
Flag.
That was
a virtual thing went virtually viral.
Yeah.
A virtual thing went virtually viral.
A virtual thing that went viral has attracted, literally a virtual thing that has attracted real people to follow it, that was signed by a real music company. So when people found out, and you know, he had this thing, they created it where, again, using artificial intelligence, he spit bars. You know, of course, he's voiced over by someone else. You know, he shows videos on TikTok. So like the whole thing, they went through the whole thing. So far, I mean, it got so crazy that a living rapper actually did a video with this guy. Like did a song with, it wasn't Da Baby, I think it was Lil Baby. But anyway,
it was Gunna, and where's Gunna at?
It was Gunna.
The same rapper that didn't clarify what Pushin P was is now sitting in the penitentiary. That's what happens when you got language and you don't understand the sense of power through the airstreams of music. That's so you got virtual rappers.
I'm letting Rashad just handle that situation. I'm gonna just let Rashad handle that situation.
I'm gonna leave with this.
Gunna did a song with this thing. Gunna did a song with this thing. It came out. It like got all this attention. Well, now this was like a few days ago. Now, Capitol Music Group said on Tuesday that it is severing ties with the Yeah.
Throw it away. Just throw the whole thing.
How do you sever ties with something that's not even existent? That's like you going up to a car.
Do you unplug it?
It's like if you go to your car and be like, "This is where we have to go separate ways." What the? It's severing ties with FN Meccan. The news comes less than 2 weeks after the record company announced it was signed Meccan. And according to Capitol Records, this is the quote they put out. Here's what they said. And King Keenan, let's put this quote out. They said that Capitol accompanied the announcement of dropping FN Meccan with a statement that addressed the backlash. They said that we offer our deepest apologies to the Black community for our insensitivity in signing this project without asking enough questions about equity and the creative process behind it. We thank those who have reached out to us with constructive feedback in the past couple of days. Your input was invaluable as we came to the decision to end our association with the project. Essentially, people were pushing back on the fact that they thought that this project added more stereotypes to hip hop artists. Here's what they also said. The company behind Meccan, Factory New, stood by the team effort on the creation, though one founder, Anthony Martini, conceded the early content. He said, if you take it out of context, it obviously looks worse or different than it was intended.
Well, out of context, we heard what we heard. We see
what we see, but we taking it out of context. Like basically, he was like, ain't nobody offended by this. Hey, Keenan, put the picture back up on it. Just this thing looks crazy as hell, but it takes elements of the culture, what we like to see in rappers.
You know, so it calls back to play with this likeness and this image type of thing, right? And protecting our human property, right, as intellectual property in a space where we can be cloned or assimilated into a whole nother device and not having no control of it, because it's grounded in it's an algorithm, right? It's artificial intelligence. Whatever is the coder and whatever data that they're putting in that's correlating and creating a digital profile of this person is going to be a reflection of the society that we are in. So when you have when you have a culture that's grounded in indecency, murder, racism, and bigotry, and then you have to create this avatar that emasculates or showcases those type of data points, it calls back to one, the call of data and controlling of our story and our narrative. What we allow as a culture to be the music that is going to define us and tell us as our stories of the moments that we're in. And how do we have a level of accountability that we're not exploited, right? So I call in the question, like, let's just end with rapping all together. Let's go back to hip hop and see if a virtual component can replicate all the different pillars of hip hop, because it's not just rapping itself.
I'm all cool for technology and stuff. Look, Nira told me, my wife told me the other day, she was like, yo, Farajii, Meg Thee Stallion got a virtual show coming to Baltimore. I was like, a virtual show? Like, yeah, they're going to like use technology. She's not going to be there, but you can come and see her. I mean, we all heard about the hologram of Tupac and all of that stuff. And it's just like, you know, this virtual show.
Games. It's giving me Hunger Games, bro.
It's like some Matrix stuff. Like, I don't even know like how to take this, because again, I'm all for, you know, advancing the culture. I love, of course, you know, this whole show platform is rooted in hip hop philosophy, in a sense of, you know, this is the culture, right? But it seems like it gets to be going into this weird space. You got artificial intelligence rappers, like as if we don't have enough black boys and black girls that want to be rappers in this country. Like you need to create a new rapper to meet a certain. I just don't get it. I don't get it, bro. This stuff, it's as people say nowadays, y'all just different. This weird.
Nothing is safe these days. Can we safeguard something?
Like I just never, you would never heard this. Like 10 years ago, we wouldn't be on talking about, yeah. I mean, now you talking about fake rappers with 10 million followers. Like who are you streaming? Who are you downloading? Like, and you're like, oh yeah, yo. And I bet you somebody be like, boy, he got better bars than Lil Wayne. You'd be like,
I'm sure he should have been imported with every encyclopedia and thesaurus, but even if you're imported with all of those different languages and words, you still use the N-word?
And then you're going to have them using the N-word, and then
like what did they program an ethnicity, a race to this?
That's what I'm saying. Like, Rashad, our culture becomes this commodity. Our culture becomes this, you know what I'm saying? A way that we express ourselves has now officially become like just this other thing where we can't, where we just a damn stereotype. Being black, being able to speak our struggle through poetic language, all of it has just become a stereotype. We just like, oh, okay, you're a product. Your pain is a product. Your struggle is a product. Your identity is a product, right? And guess what? We're not only going to take all of that, we're going to make it newer. We're going to make it better. We're going to make it shinier. And we're going to be more popular using all of that we gained from your living self and put it into a virtual self. This stuff is weird, bro.
We're going to take your likeness for our liking. That's
create it and then exploit it. Come on, I can't emphasize, Keenan, one more time as we close out the show. Show this picture. What black person looks like this, bro? Look at this. This dude looks like something from Terminator or Aliens. What is this? I can't, man. I can't. That's insulting. I'm glad Capitol Music decided not to, as they say, sever their ties with them. But y'all should decide this thing in the first place. Y'all thought this was going to be the future.
So did it sign its own contract? I have so many questions. We're gonna have to pick this one back up. Do you just unplug it, or do you gotta erase it? You got Central or delete? Like what's going?
Bro, I don't know. Total Recall rappers, man.
How would he perform? It would have to be I don't know, like
Rashad, you asking too many logical questions that I can't answer, brother.
You know how you want to be
I'm
like
laughing, but it's sad, man.
if you
That's the
reach
way
on
our
the stage,
culture is.
is
Right.
it gonna be a hologram? Like, 'cause if you do it disappear when you try to touch his feet when it's going across the stage to rap. I got so many questions, but I'm glad that they deleted it, and I want to delete it from my memory, and I hope that they don't do a 2.0 prototype, because that's going to be even more scary. And like you said, we already culturally, we think there's a few ways out of the hood. If they create that, you can't rap your way out the hood no more at this point.
Hell no. Hell no. Man, oh man. All right, my big brother, Rashad, thank you so much, sir. It's always good to talk to you. Welcome back. I'm glad to hear that we get to hear from you and see you. So I appreciate your time with us today. Thank you, Rashad, for being so good for the culture this afternoon.
Always, bro. Always love for the culture, as always. Thank you for having me, man.
Absolutely. Peace. Anytime. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. All right, look, we need your support in real life. All right, make sure y'all hit us up on blackstarnetwork.com. Show your support for this fantastic media institution as we continue to do the great work of bringing you stories and conversations that are important to you. Support the Black Star Network at blackstarnetwork.com. Also, all right, speaking of the virtual world, make sure y'all follow me. I always love to hear what you got to say. Hit me up on my Facebook page at Farajii Muhammad and Twitter Farajii, and my Instagram page. You can follow me at The Real Farajii. I'm always posting something. You know, I posted a couple of things last night about Kobe Bryant and posted the situation in Uvalde. We didn't talk about that today, but we definitely need to share that. But make sure y'all follow me. I'm always looking for new friends. At Farajii, Farajii. I am The Real Farajii. Just follow it right there at the bottom. There you go. Boom. And make sure y'all continue to have the conversations. Big shout out to my online culture crew. Always appreciate each and every one of you for making these conversations so worthwhile. So thank you for your support in being in the chat and having these discussions. All right, make sure y'all stay tuned, because at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is Big Brother Roland Martin. RMU will be coming up next. It's Thursday nights. You know how they rock and roll. Big shout out to my team. You know what I'm saying? Reese, big shout out to Dr. Carr. Big shout out to Erica. Big shout out to all of the folks that are doing the great work on RMU to be the voices of our people in so many different ways. So make sure y'all tune in for that. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. Make sure, and a big shout out to my team, Joel, Shannon, King Keenan, Ariel, and of course, all of those in the control room that's making the culture the great show that it really is. I thank y'all so much for tuning in, and I look forward to chatting with you tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Have a great evening and talk to you soon. Peace.